Hello, everybody, and welcome to Session 0. I am Lincoln L. Hayes. This is the WEIRDOS episode. This is the episode of folks who decided to play the non-standard races, and it's fun, and it's strange, and we're going to get right into it and introduce. We got a big panel this time, so no time wasted with me. Here we go. Welcome, everybody, to the show.
Hello.
I've decided that the awkward wave is the funny way to go.
I couldn't remember where we landed on that.
I gave Fred one instruction. And he forgot.
One job.
Anyway,
We can take
let's
a
go around and introduce everybody. We got a couple new people. We got a couple people who've been on before. So let's just get right into it with Jess. Tell us about your Fire Genasi Pyra.
Hi, I'm Jess. I play a Fire Genasi paladin named Pyra Flamesgrace. And I've only made her recently, so I haven't gotten to experience her a lot, but I already love her. So I'm enjoying playing more with her very soon.
Wonderful. And Rachel, welcome back to the show. Tell us about River Swift.
River Swift is a water genasi rogue, and same thing. I made her earlier this year, so I haven't played her for too long, but I really also I really love her. I kind of based her a little bit as on Han Solo. She's kind of like a pirate Han Solo, and she's a lot of fun, and yeah, so I really enjoy playing her so far.
Next up is another returning guest. Philip, tell us about TikTok.
Okay, so TikTok is a Warforged barbarian, and I actually first built TikTok in a 3.5 and Pathfinder hybrid game. So now I am looking at kind of revamping him for 5e now that we've gotten more fleshed out rules for Eberron races.
Dope. I've wanted to play a Warforged, but I look at it and I get really intimidated. So I look forward to hearing about playing that. Next is Dylan with Benny. Welcome, Dylan.
Thank you. Hey, guys. So Benny is a Tabaxi bard. Benny's real name is actually Kat Benatar. And as a predilection for not offering his real name in various places, things like Cat Stevens, Puma Thurman, Brad Kitt, a variety of examples that Benny will give out rather than revealing his real identity.
That's
Which
amazing.
I'll tell you was a little frustrating for the DM to be like, what do you mean that's not your real name? What's your real name then? And now I know, and I'm not going to tell. It's a secret. Welcome back, Ted, from our first episode. Also responsible for making all this show happen. Thanks, Ted.
Oh,
tell us about Timbus.
my pleasure. Timbus. Timbus is a Tortle druid, 5 foot tall, little elderly, kind of bumbling about druid fella. I kind of based him on like Radagast meets kind of like an Obi-Wan kind of thing, but he's kind of this, seems like he's not all together there. It's kind of fun to play because, slow down, everybody. I'm a turtle. I don't need to go so fast. He's a lot of fun to play. I actually have my Hero Forge figure of Timbus here. If you want to see him,
Nice.
Everyone lean in close. That's Timbus. Yeah, I made him for one shot that I played a while ago, and then when Lincoln asked if I could join one of the games, then I was like, yes, I have a character. I love him, and he is ready to go.
His beloved character that I proceeded to almost kill the second game we played.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ted.
Yeah, with the froghemoth.
Yes. Yeah, he got swallowed. A frog swallowed a turtle because, nature.
Yeah.
All right, next, returning to the show is Fred Naumann. Tell us about Oswald.
Hi. Yeah. So Oswald is an Aasimar sorcerer. His full name is actually Oswald Thunderfist Whiteclaw, and he is a scion of nobility. So the sort of Cliff Notes version of Oswald is that he's very good-natured and way too trusting for his own good. and so his kind of like crooked father convinced him that there was like a really important quest that he needed to go do out there in the world away from the throne, so that his less scrupulous younger sister could be in charge instead.
Interesting.
So he wasn't sent away because he preferred White Claws to other beverages.
That's the name. I mean, that's the royal house of White Claw, of which he,
Well, you can tell
is
how they
the,
made their
crown
money.
prince.
And their arch rival is Bud Light Seltzer. It's interesting that you play your Aasimar is kind of the naive, trusts everybody, because our Aasimar does the same thing. Wonder if that's common among Aasimars. Lastly, rounded things out is my good friend Matt. Welcome to the show, Matt. Tell us about Betwixt.
Betwixt is actually Betwixt Nilbog, named for the town in Troll 2. It's Goblin spelled backwards. Betwixt is a goblin necromancer. Little green, long pointed nose, wide brimmed hat, flies around on a broom. And the magic words to raise the dead are wakey, wakey. Actually, I have an illustration that I made of Betwixt right here.
There they are. Matt has actually drawn all of our characters, and oh my God, they're so great. All right.
Thank you.
Let's jump right in. And we're just going to start with Jess and work our way around.
Well,
Jess,
hold on, Lincoln. Do you want to? Do you want to talk about your character?
Oh, why? Thank you, Theodore. That's so nice of you. I play in a game that Ted runs, and I am playing Crew, an Aarakocra sorcerer warlock. And I am a sorcerer warlock because we got into the Underdark as we're running out of the abyss, and Aarakocra don't have dark vision. So my beloved DM basically made me take the Demogorgon as my patron so I could be a warlock and I could have dark vision. And now we're level 6 and I have 9 cantrips.
Ooh.
I highly recommend multi-classing between magic users. You get a bunch of shit. It's great. All right. Question number 1 to Pyra Flamesgrace. Why did you decide to go fire Genasi?
Well, in one of the D&D games I'm playing, my character had a decision. She didn't die, but she had a decision that placed in front of her to reunite with her family and help them with some stuff they had going on, or stay with the party. And we'd kind of reached the sort of conclusion-ish of her storyline. So I was like, so my DM presented me with this opportunity. It's like, hey, do you want to go with your family? And I was like, I guess so. So I needed a new character and I didn't have a backup character. And I saw this really great art online by an artist on Tumblr called Lucy Liu. And she does this amazing fantasy art. And I really loved her series of Genasi characters she did. And I was like, that would be fun to do. And I'd never played a paladin before. So I was like, let's make a fire Genasi paladin. That sounds neat. And so it was just sort of a, forgive the pun, a spark of an idea. And I just word vomited her out on the page. And she was there.
Next up, Rachel, tell us about River Swift.
So we, early on in the pandemic, we were going to start like another game to teach friends of ours how to play. And so I wanted to play something weird. And I was researching different types of kind of weird characters. And I came across Genasis and I was reading about them. And I almost picked a fire Genasi, but then I play a tiefling in our other game. And I was like, okay, I want to try something a little different. I don't need more fire. So what I liked about the water Genasi was that the idea that they, kind of do what they want. They go with the flow. They move where they want. They say what they want. They're kind of a little bit of loners. And so I made a character that has a little bit of mystery to her. And she, rushes in and takes charge and says what she wants. And has some secrets to her, and I thought it was kind of cool to have how be able to control water, and so I find myself always looking for water in our game actually, which is funny. But yeah, I just thought it was kind of a fun character, and then I chose rogue to kind of pair with it. I had been a rogue before, and I thought it was kind of a cool thing to be like a pirate. Like that's kind of what I wanted to make her as, like a swashbuckler pirate, and that's what she is with like kind of that combo.
River is also constantly being covered in goo. Since she rushes in when the thing explodes, it has just become a running joke. And she's like, "Did I get crap all over me again?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, it's nasty." And she's like, "Next time we're in town, I'm getting a poncho."
I'm not kidding about. I'm buying a poncho. I know. I'm very serious about that.
Well, you're gonna have some shopping on our next session, so
Hey,
load up.
I hope it's a splash zone like what you get at SeaWorld.
Roll for
Ooh,
it. and see what
commemorative
happens.
poncho.
A commemorative poncho.
I'm on full Gordon's Fisherman, so I don't know where you're at.
Hey, we have not established if there is a SeaWorld in Waterdeep, but I mean,
There could be.
It
Who
is
knows?
Waterdeep. I mean,
For those
Waterdeep
Exactly.
full of sea animals world.
for those Taz
World deep.
lovers, H2O, that was fun.
Oh God.
Yep.
Oh no.
All right, Phil, tell us about TikTok.
okay. So, like I said, TikTok originated from a 3.5 campaign, and we were playing some ridiculously overpowered stuff. And we were going into a low magic campaign where the world was much more akin to like Song of Ice and Fire, where there was magic at one point, but it's kind of aged and fallen away from memory. So TikTok was designed as a character who was going to be encountered by the one caster in that group, who was a scared young boy looking for someone to protect him. And he came across what he thought was a statue, and lo and behold, it turned out to actually still be alive. So that was the character concept inspiration, and then the barbarian, and he actually was a barbarian rogue. The
Sneaky,
idea
sneaky,
being,
smashy.
the idea being that he carried a Goliath's great hammer, and most rogues, will sneak attack you in the spleen with a rapier, and TikTok will, sneak attack your brains across that wall with a hammer the size of you.
That's awesome.
So it was a lot of power gaming going into the build design for him, because in 3.5 Warforged did not take non-lethal damage and couldn't get tired. So the idea of a barbarian who wouldn't be affected by dropping out of his rage at any given point and could theoretically rage forever was very appealing.
Yeah, I'd say that's overpowered. I would shut that shit down immediately, because what do you do against that? That's insane. And sounds so fun.
It was a blast. Everybody else in the campaign, we were running Gestalt, so everybody was leveling in 2 classes simultaneously. So getting full advantage of both the barbarian and the rogue levels all the way up.
That's awesome.
Lincoln, I want to switch to 3.5. I don't know what that is, but I want it.
Tough. I have to kill off Orson first. But we're not here to talk about Orson. That's next week's episode. This week we're going to talk about Benny. Why did you choose Tabaxi for Cat Benatar?
Cat puns aside, the obvious reason. I actually went about it a little bit the other direction. I had played a fighter before. It's the only character I'd ever played, the starter kit character, basically, as we learned the game. And I wanted to go completely the opposite direction. And the furthest I could think of from running into the fray and hitting anything with a sword was standing as far away as you can and playing a harp. So I picked this bard character, and then went into the background that I wanted. And I knew that I wanted to give him some super non-heroic reason to be out there. Like even the accumulation of wealth and the finding of treasure has some hero to it. And it's like, I don't want that either. I want to find something. So I wanted to build a bard who was conceptualized around the collection of stories and just wanting to know the stories and wanting to see them happen and write them and then have other people read them and love them. And so as I came through this, I found the Tabaxi character, and I was immediately interested by the concept of them, especially because they are a race of, they have no interest in gold. They're into trinkets. They're into information. They're cats. I mean, they don't care about how much something costs. They care about how shiny it is. So that was sort of the impetus of it. And then I got drawn in by the concept of, you know, being able to climb, having claws, having a tail. All of these things became really exciting, and I went about it that way and built it from there.
And Benny's a lot of fun, I have to say. Benny is fun in our game. And because it is so different from Orson and Roran, your first character that you played, it's fun to see you play him too. So kudos to you. All right, Ted. Timbus, why'd you go Tortle?
I made Timbus when I was still kind of learning the whole world of D&D and learning all the characters. And you know, a friend asked me to get involved in a one shot and on like Roll20. So it just has that like that kind of algorithm that you just like pick stuff kind of and you build your character. And like a lot of these things, like Warforged, I didn't know what that is. Genasi, I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what these things are. And then it's like, okay, human. Okay, all right, humans. And Goblin, okay, I kind of know what that is. And then here's a thing that is kind of familiar enough. It's not too strange where I have to kind of like learn what it is. Like, no, it's a turtle. Like that's just so kind of ridiculous and unique. And what makes sense for a turtle with just a druid. So I kind of came up with this character that like he's just kind of this bumbling nomad. He doesn't really have a home. He likes living out in nature. He likes to collect little trinkets as he goes along, and he just kind of shows up. And then the personality, it kind of started from Crash from Finding Nemo, where it's just kind of this like stoner thing. But then I had built him that he's like really old. So it's like, okay, what's Crash but like 300 years old, and he's like, hey guys, like this whole thing.
He's Tommy Chong.
yeah, pretty much. But yeah, it was like it was unique and accessible to say like, oh, this is a turtle person. Like Tabaxi, like I don't know what that word means or what that is. I'd have to kind of like learn more about that or yeah, but or like Aasimar, like these things, like I didn't really know what they were, but turtle, like just a big kind of bumbling turtle person, I thought was a really interesting thing. So
that's excellent. And what a great way to start a character of like, I don't know. I know what that is. Got it.
Yeah.
I'm a human fighter. Nope. Tortle Druid makes total sense.
Human fighter was my first character, Ham.
Yeah, Ham von Hammond.
Yeah.
And Fred, what's going on with your Aasimar over there?
Yeah, well, so this was kind of another case of having like the general character concept first and then building like the mechanics out from there. But in this case, like that, when I settled on Aasimar, it really helped me lock in a lot of stuff and kind of like expanded the scope of it in a cool way. So originally I had this idea for this character. I had the basic outline of like, it's this, noble who is, kind of an innocent and good-hearted person in a family of nobles that are kind of like crooked and conniving. And so, the reason that they're on adventures is part of a scheme by their family to get them out of the way. And I kind of like that idea partly because I feel like in D&D, like if you're going to play the goody two-shoes, it helps if you're kind of dumb, because the party is a lot of the time going to want to do some not so goody two-shoes stuff. And it just sucks to have to be the buzzkill that's always like, yes. Oh, I don't want to do that. So if
we shouldn't be doing this.
So if you're nice but kind of dumb, then it's like it's a free excuse for the unscrupulous party members to just kind of trick you into going along with what's going on. Like, oh no, like we're not robbing this guy. He forgot to pay his back taxes, whatever it is.
So fantasy taxes.
There's always fantasy taxes.
Of course, there's a whole fantasy economy for everybody to nerd out over. Mm-hmm. Anyway, So originally I wanted to be a paladin, and the idea was that like they were going to be a member of this, like that their family was going to have convinced them to join some order that's kind of like the Night's Watch in Game of Thrones, where like they forsake all right to inherit land and titles and all that jazz. But then I rolled really, really, really crappy stats. And it turns out that a paladin kind of needs to have like at least 2 or 3 stats that are decent. Like you need to have pretty good strength or dexterity, a pretty good charisma, like wisdom helps, and constitution, since you're going to be out there getting beat on a lot. So I was like, well, maybe I should be a magic user instead, because there's a lot of spells that you can cast and it kind of doesn't matter what your ability scores are. Like you cast a spell and it's out there. So I went with sorcerer, and then like in D&D, sorcerers have, their power comes from their bloodline in some way, from like their ancestors. And I kind of liked the idea that like this guy had celestial ancestry, which is what an Aasimar is. They are like a creature whose one of their ancestors was, like an angel or a divine being of some kind. And I figured like that was kind of a cool way to set up where his noble heritage comes from too. And it's playing with that idea of like the divine right of kings and all that. So his family rules based on this idea that they're sort of like these noble protectors of the realm. But as it turns out, like having, being part god doesn't actually necessarily make you a good person. It's just that Oswald happens to be one. So yeah, so all of that kind of came together in this really interesting way that lets me kind of play around with the character's larger story with ideas about like good and evil and ancestry and like, your family obligations versus, doing what's right. But at the same time, I get to play him day to day as this kind of like goofus 20-something who has like never really been outside of the castle that much until he went out on this dumb fake quest. And so like, I get to act very silly. And I do like a big kind of, pubescent teenager voice like this. That's like what he sounds like.
That's amazing. And probably a little difficult to maintain. Oh God, can I just grow up already? Jesus.
You would think, but it's kind of like you slip into it over the course of a session and it just works. And it's like making any choice in improv, like it shapes what comes out of you after. Like when you start talking in that voice, like you start saying stuff that voice would say, and it makes it easier to play.
Totally. All right, Matthew, why'd you go Goblin? You made a lot of work for yourself.
Oof, I sure did. So when I started learning how to play D&D, I was playing a character that was out of the starter kit, and it was a human fighter. And I got really bored being a human fighter really quick. And so I initially turned him into a werewolf, which made him way more interesting. But then decided to phase him out and come up with a new character that I think I would have a lot more fun playing. I really wanted to play a magic user. So I was thinking like, okay, I want something that's like really witchy. And I was thinking maybe warlock, maybe wizard, maybe tiefling. And I like bounced a lot of ideas around. And then I did a deep dive on the internet and was like, ooh, you know what I want? Something real fringe. I'm going goblin. And there are so many like goblin variants out there that made homebrewing it a real challenge. But it made it really customizable. Like I was coming into this party at, I think we were all 5th level at the time. And various other characters had like all sorts of magic items and all sorts of like things they had collected along the way. So it didn't really make a whole lot of sense for me to come in like fresh, like without anything and be able to help or join this party in a meaningful way. So my benevolent DM was gracious enough to allow me to come in with at least one good magic item, which is the flying broomstick. It also casts a few spells with charges, but basically I made like the witchiest thing I could is like a little green long-nosed goblin with a big hat and a broomstick, like cackling all along the way.
Give us a taste of Betwixt's voice, because I love it.
Oh God, that's actually, I'm gonna get to that in a minute, but Betwixt talks like this. It's like very neat. And sometimes I think I annoy my other players.
Not at all.
Not
Not
true.
at all.
It is excellent.
Ooh, and just so you know, I wore this
Yeah.
Yeah.
specifically.
Rachel
for
has
this.
that as a purse. It's
I
over
do.
there.
Mhm.
And for crew, I went Aarakocra because I was playing an Aarakocra cleric in and actually the game that Ted ended up joining, and I was playing that because this particular party didn't think to have a cleric, and they did a lot of rushing in, and they fell down a lot. So I was like, all right, I'm going to give you an NPC, and I was actually running a module that I'd run for my group, Forge of Fury, out of Tales from the Yawning Portal. So I knew it, and I knew what they needed, and I knew that they were going to need a cleric. So I was looking through all the races and stuff, and I was like, Aarakocra, huh? They're kind of wimpy, but they can fly. Hell yeah. So I had made Guka, was my original Aarakocra, and I phased her out of that game. And then when Ted asked me to join his, I was like, I didn't really get to do much with Guka, so I'm going to make another one. This one's got a draconic bloodline, and I went sorcerer because I'd never played a magic user before, and it is great. Ted can attest to how frustrating it is to have a flying character in your party.
But it's also the we're running the Out of the Abyss campaign, so we took the Aarakocra and we put them underground, which you
sucks.
like you hate,
Super
yeah,
sucks.
which is like it's so funny, and then there's so much like travel encounter things that are like skill based. Like I had to eliminate all of that. It's like, oh well, there's no flying over a cavern isn't going to be a challenge. And like, okay, it's just
You
like
come to a cavern with a rickety bridge. I fly over it.
yeah. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that.
Yep, you do.
Yeah.
But crew is great, and in the description of the race, because they're birds, it says that they speak in like chirps and clicks and stuff. So I was really trying early on to make sure that every time I spoke, I went, and then I would talk, and then I would end with a. I've phased that out because fuck that. It was so annoying. Even for me, I was just like, this is crew. Crew's talking. Okay, everybody understand that?
Well, that's what I heard from the bedroom when you would play, and I didn't understand what you were doing. I thought you were like clicking a pen, and I now know that it was. I eventually like figured it out. I was like, oh, I think he's making like bird noises, but I was going to request that maybe you stop that.
We phased that noise out of someone in my my old office because they would click pens all the time, and we replaced all of their pens with the capped kind. No more clicky pens for him. And that noise left too. And I can tell you, the party was happier.
I bet.
All right, gang. Next question. So, of this group, we've all played standard races and non-standard races. So we're going to go backwards now, starting with Matt. How has playing a goblin been different from playing a human? I mean, the list is probably pretty long, but just kind of some bullet points of like, yeah, this was a good choice.
I think for me, the biggest perk was the ability to really customize this character. Like playing a human before, even turning him into a werewolf and a blood hunter, made him a lot more fun. But like, because I had to homebrew the goblin and because I had to homebrew the necromancer, I was like, the world is mine. And so that was really, really fun. A ton of work, but really fun. And so like as a player, that was the biggest difference. In game, I think being able to build a personality that was very outside of myself, like it was the second character I played. So I was a lot more confident in doing like a voice and doing like this chaotic neutral. So like makes a lot of really bad choices and does things on whims, and you know it's been like really fun in that aspect.
Also, being a goblin, one of your character traits is that you will frequently do disguise self when in more diverse settings, or actually I should say less diverse settings. When you're around humans, you tend to throw that up. Why did you go with that choice?
everybody knows that goblins are not particularly favored in the D&D world. They're pretty common, but not always. They're more tribal and rough around the edges. And this goblin is not that way, has done a good job of fitting into like urban society, but is also like a shop owner, Morgana Le Fay's House of Voodoo. And so their alter ego is Morgana Le Fay. This like, I always imagine like Helena Bonham Carter or like Jamie Lee Curtis or like this very stately woman who's like got it all together, and no one knows that there's like gruesome little goblin on the inside that is like selling them their incense and shit like that.
That's great. Fred, we've had you on to talk about Cassian, specifically to talk about playing a human. What's your biggest difference that you've noticed between being a human and being a celestial touched being?
I get dark vision. No.
Yes. Dark vision.
It's seriously the most frustrating thing about being a human in D&D. You're one of like 3 races that can't see in the freaking dark, and the rest of your party is just laughing at you like, what a chump. The thing about Aasimars is that like, in a lot of ways, they're kind of just like human plus. Like they don't really like look that different from humans. I mean, they have like 1 or 2 characteristics that makes them look sort of a little bit like special, you know, a little like touched by the divine, whatever. So, you know, in Oswald's case, like his skin is kind of like metallic and like copper. It looks like he's made of like living copper, sort of. But it's not like the kind of race where people look at you and like, oh, it's a monster, you know. In a sense, it's almost more of like a backstory choice, because like it's about where you come from. It's about like the origins of your power and your traits and stuff. So it's like it's kind of fun in that way, and I anticipate it being more fun, like even more fun as the campaign develops. But like practically speaking, it's mostly like being a human, except for I get a few fun, like really fun tricks that I can do. Like I get a little bit of healing, just a little bit of innate healing that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And my favorite thing is that starting at, I think, 3rd level, I've been able to once a day sprout big glowing wings and fly around for a minute, which is pretty sweet. I'm sure, as you can well attest, being able to fly rocks. And it's not like I can do it all the time, so that I'm just like bypassing any kind of like ground-based traps or obstacles. But it's a nice thing to be able to just pull out of your hat once a day when it's like you really need to just fly around and kick some aerial butt. I enjoy that. When our Aasimar unveiled his wings for the first time, it was pretty friggin' cool. So yeah, flying's great. All right, Theodore. I think you've logged more time as a DM than you have as a player, but in your experience, how is your Tortle compared to your other races you've played?
Well, my only other character was, again, the bog standard human fighter, which was fun because I actually had a lot of fun with that character, because there's not a lot you can do. So it's kind of like, all right, I'm just going to make up for it as a human fighter with like a goofy personality or something. But my favorite part about the Tortles and a lot of these other races is that you don't like, there's no preconception about turtle people society or how it's structured, or like Tabaxi or something. Like you don't have any kind of preconceptions about it. So it's kind of like a blank slate. Like humans, we obviously know how humans work. And then dwarves, like, okay, there's a lot of history and a lot of stories and things about that. Elves even are cool, but there's a lot of history and kind of stuff. So it kind of, in a way, it kind of just puts you in like a smaller box of kind of what you can really do. So the thing that really appealed to me was that there's not really any rules to this character or how it interacts. And I'm actually running another, it's supposed to be a 1-shot that's now turned into a 5 or 6 shot of the, of running the, in the Tortle package book, there's a little temple in there. So you're like running this group through the the Typhoon Palace, and we actually had a game today, and so they're in the Tortle Island where they live, and now like they're just about to finish this. So the next session that we do, I'm gonna have to figure out, okay, well, how do they what happens now that they go back to the village and they interact with this other village? Like, who are these people, and what, like, how does it work then? So that was a big appeal to me, and what the possibilities are with that.
I had that a little bit with Aarakocra too. Like they have kind of societies and stuff, but it's kind of limited to Tomb of Annihilation. Like there's a whole Aarakocra society there. So I read that and I was like, oh wow, I wasn't playing Guka like that at all. And then Crew, I was like, I'm just gonna do whatever I want. But that's cool. I've never thought about coming at it from a anthropology perspective. Dylan, so you played a man, then you played a man. Now you're a cat.
Cat man.
I'm a cat man.
So some of it is directly pulled from what Ted just said. So I'll just copy his homework. But one of the big things for me was also, as I thought about this backstory, and I said this at the beginning, that the backstory was a big part of why I chose this race at all. And part of it was that I got to write my own culture, pretty much. In this world that we're in with my Tabaxi, they are a relatively secluded. You've either never heard of them or at least have never seen one. And so to see one is a little bit odd, and they live far away. They're not in the sort of the normal area where people are traveling, so you wouldn't have come across them. Is that true D&D lore? I have no idea. Is it true movies or pop culture lore? It doesn't matter, because there isn't really pop culture lore around it. And so it was something that was really fun to be able to write a backstory that fit that way. So kudos to you, Ted. Like I said, just going to copy it and paste it right over here. But the other thing that's made a big difference to me is picking these characters. People brought up flight, the ability to climb, the ability to have like a tail and have claws. Your ability to manipulate the environment just feels different. I feel like I am something different in there. And to be honest, I have nothing against humans, 2020 notwithstanding. And but because you can do a lot of these things with a human character. I equally, there's something fun about taking a character that everyone knows and that has tropes and defying them, being the drunk elf rather than the drunk dwarf, being a dwarf who's on the straight and narrow. These are obvious ways to a gnome that thinks he's big and bad and, can go up and fight anyone. These are fun tropes to play against, but, bringing someone that you can put your own story behind and bring into a world and then still have the tools at your disposal to manipulate it the way you want has, I think, been the biggest difference and what's been the most fun.
Also, the fun thing about that particular game that Benny and River are in is it started out as a test game to see if our other friends were going to be interested. So we didn't really have any long-term goals. It was like, all right, let's see how it goes. And that's kind of how Crew happened too. I was just supposed to be in a one-shot with Ted to help him run the game. And then I was like, I'll die or I'll run away or whatever. And then I fell in love with the character. So I'm really enjoying the dynamics that you guys have with your characters in that game, because in the other one, like, it was on the paper. You're like, I know what I want to do. I have quests that are written into the game. And in this one, it's just like, you're on an island. There are other people around. What do you want to do? And they just developed and grew. And Benny has turned into a real asset to the party with what he does with his bard skills. So kudos to you. All right, TikTok, Warforged. That's got to be... strangely, it's probably going to be similar to other races, but then made of metal. So how does that work for you?
So it's a little different in 5e because they tweaked a lot of things after the Unearthed Arcana version of the race came out. They had a lot of qualities that were more akin to what things were in 3.5, but they scaled a lot of that back and actually stripped out a lot for the final publication version for 5e, which was kind of disappointing because there were some really, really cool like sub races that got one that was more built for heavy combat that would have been, powerfully built like a Goliath, being able to be treated as, larger than you actually are for when it's beneficial. I don't know. There's in 3.5 playing around with them though, he was in this particular campaign with TikTok, he was the last of the Warforged. He was, he'd been sitting underground in this sealed off chamber for 10,000 years before the little wizard boy came across him and activated him. And so there was a lot of aspects of the world that were different. So he was very much a character out of time. He didn't really have any other Warforged to interact with until we did a prequel campaign that was done as a one-shot, where we actually had all of these other Warforged that had been part of his like special forces crew. And
it sounds very Cybermen-esque from Doctor
yeah,
Who,
a little
which is
bit.
very cool.
I
was also
I was
looking at the Warforged when I was just kind of thinking of an NPC and maybe like working it into a story, and my brain melted a little bit when I realized that if you made a Warforged gunslinger, you basically are RoboCop. And I was like, I want to do that. I haven't, but I really want to.
I did another Warforged in another campaign who was a pirate. His name was Jetsam, and he fought with a spiked chain that he just carried wrapped around his arm because, it wasn't going to hurt him to have it sitting there.
No piercing damage for me. Thanks. Dylan, you were saying?
Oh no, I was going to say there are so many awesome examples of things like what you're describing, but all I'm getting in my mind is a mental image of Full Metal Alchemist, the little boy walking around with the giant suit of armor following him and beating people up on his behalf.
That was definitely some of the inspiration, with a little bit of like Vision of Escaflowne kind of tossed in there with this giant mechanical thing that was maybe also magic and could occasionally transform into different things. So
sounds very, very cool. Rachel, you've played a halfling, you've played an elf, I think, a tiefling, and now a water genasi. What are you liking about River? What's not working for you as well, if anything?
At this point, nothing's really like not working for me with River. I didn't enjoy being a halfling because I was a halfling rogue, so now I am a water genasi rogue, and now I know that a halfling, I could have played her a little bit better. She does have some advantages here or there, but I really enjoyed River being a little bit taller and tougher in a lot of ways. I like the River Genasi in that like they have some, it's similar to a tiefling in that a tiefling is demon touched and close to a human, but doesn't look like a human. Is a human, but demon touched. And then a water genasi or any genasi is the half genie from the elemental plane, and then a human. So they have a lot of similar characteristics in that. Both of them are written kind of that like either my tiefling, her parents kind of locked her away and cast her out, and she ran away to live her own life. The water genasi, like with genasis, they might not ever meet their genie half, but I kind of twisted it and had like the parents really fall in love. Her mother was a pirate, father was a genie, have them actually fall in love and have them kind of give up their other worlds and live together and raise her. So she actually in D&D grew up having like really loving parents.
What are you even doing?
I know, right? But I kind of liked that idea. I had read like an article or something that was talking about like there's no like happy backstory with any D&D characters. So I had her do that. So that's a little different from the tiefling, but they're very similar in a lot of ways. They have like genasi speak primordial and tiefling speak infernal, and they have like certain resistance to fire and can breathe underwater and like all these little inherent kind of natural magic things that they have to them. And then an elf is very different. So the tiefling and genasi I feel like are very similar, but I'm having a lot of fun playing the genasi for the same reasons that I like being a tiefling. They have their weaknesses and strengths, and they're close to a human like that, or really any character, but I just like playing something a little different. Like she has blue skin and green hair, and it's just kind of fun to literally to play a weirdo. Like I yeah, it's kind of an untraditional sort of way to play it. And I love playing an elf too, and they're, powerful and confident, and the water genasi is also very confident too. So I kind of like that I have that aspect of playing maybe one of more of the powerful races like an elf, that the water genasi is technically weaker, I guess, but like she's still pretty confident and badass.
And because of the new fancy sword that you have, her hair is always billowy, like she's
Oh,
underwater.
Beyonce. It's just Beyonce.
And her skin is dewy.
Yes,
So she's very, very beautiful.
I love it.
And always covered in goo.
No.
Constant effect of hero wind going. Just
Exactly.
Exactly. All right. And Fire Genasi. Why'd we go Fire Genasi specifically? Because you've played a Dragonborn that breathes fire too. Do I sense a trend?
No, actually, because my Dragonborn was blue, so she breathes lightning.
Oh, that's right.
So
my bad.
But that's okay. I honestly I just like the aesthetic idea of the Fire Genasi plus dark vision. I think Fire Genasi are the only Genasi that have dark vision.
Yeah, that was something I discovered that water genasi do not have.
Yeah. So Fire Genasi are the only Genasi that have dark vision. So that was a selling point, because we have a very large party and we tend to go in lots of caves and things. And I think we have two halflings in our party and they don't have dark vision. And I'm like, I don't want to be in the no dark vision club. So
this club sucks.
It does. Because Dragonborn, which I've also played, don't have dark vision, and I've played humans and they don't have dark vision. It's lame. But kind of going off, I think what both Fred and Ted kind of said, things that I wanted to piggyback off of, was that because there's no real like Genasi culture and like society, it's really more of like a backstory flavor thing for why I chose Fire Genasi, because they're almost like a combination as far as races go. They're almost like an elf and a dwarf, because they get the constitution bonus that I think dwarves get. I think dwarves are the only like regular race that get that.
Yeah, I think so.
But Fire Genasi get a intelligence bonus, so which is something that elves or half elves get. So it's almost like the two like stereotypical warring races together. At least that's how I kind of view it.
That's cool.
But yeah, the dark vision thing was definitely a major selling point. Also, the Fire Genasi get the produce flame cantrip, which as a playing a paladin Fire Genasi, paladins don't get cantrips. So it's nice to have a cantrip as a paladin.
Take it, man. Take that cantrip. Yeah,
exactly. And then the only like really, because I haven't played her a lot yet because she's fairly new over the past couple of months. So the only real like negative drawback I've found so far is that the spellcasting modifier for paladins is charisma, which is fine. But the spellcasting modifier for her like racial spells she gets as Fire Genasi is Constitution. So that just gets a little confusing. And that's the only real drawback I've experienced so far.
What an interesting stat block you must have.
Uh-huh.
I'm sturdy and charming. You're Chris Farley.
Yay!
There it is. Or our friend Ryan Grassmeyer, because they're basically the same person. All right, we're coming towards the end of the show.
Now I feel like I gotta figure out a way to make Matt Foley motivational speaker as a character.
Oh my god!
Do it!
Oh my god!
High charisma.
Where are you going to get all of the tables?
He's like,
is he a
you partner up with a dwarf.
Maybe?
You partner up with a dwarf who's a carpenter, and they just build you all these tables that you smash.
Amazing.
He can multi-class bard with the like artisan background, and then barbarian, like bard.
Yeah, he goes into a rage.
Barbarian.
Yeah.
Yep.
Whenever he mentions a van down by the river, that's his rage trigger.
A caravan down by the river.
That's right.
This is it. This is it. I want to thank everybody for being on the show. We're coming to our last question, and this is it of the previous two race-based episodes that I've done. this has been my favorite question, and I'm actually going to open it to the group because there are so many. I don't know that we have time to go around to everyone to talk about this. But as Matt mentioned, talking about building a goblin, there's a lot of racism in D&D and a lot of inherent bias about the weirdos out there, which are a lot of this group. So in your games, playing these characters, and we'll just, whoever has an opinion, just raise your hand and we can go that way. Have you encountered any racism or any bias against your character that has affected them in any way, or affected you as a player where you're just like, dude, gross, to your DM, or you're like, oh, actually, thank you for that. That really helps motivate with my character. Jess, your hand went up first, so we'll start with you.
It did, because I want to address it first, that my DM has purposely not put a lot of racism in our campaign, because his reasoning is that there is so much racism in real life and it's gross, and we play D&D to escape all the shit out there. So he has purposely said there will be very little to no racism in the campaign, because this is escapism. The end.
Amen. And I kind of started doing that too, where I'm like, I don't like this. I don't want to do this anymore. Matt.
I was just going to say the same thing, like, to you, Lincoln. Like, I don't know if it's because, like, you're an empath, or if you just like me, or like if it's what it is, but like people in D&D, other character or creatures should not like goblins. Like, that is like a well-established part of the lore. But Betwixt has not really encountered anyone who has given them anything more than like some side eye or like a short answer or something like that. And I wonder if it's because you don't want to do that. You just don't want to play it. We don't want to do that, right? It's exactly what you were saying. Is that, like, in a weird way, D&D is kind of a perfect world where, like, they're bad guys, we fight them, we beat them, hooray, we did it, next mission.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm trying to think of any time that Betwixt has come across anybody who has been nasty to them, but really they've only come across other goblins who are confused that they are traveling with a group of adventurers and not with a tribe somewhere. But it's okay, because Jug is your pen pal now.
Yeah. Jug can't read or write, but I do send him letters.
Every time he's like, I need to send Jug a letter. I'm like, oh, yeah, that. Okay. What do you want it to say?
Dear Jug, I know you can't read this.
Hope you're well. Love Betwixt. Rachel.
Yeah, I was just to piggyback off of that. I really like that for both like the game that my tiefling is in with Betwixt, and then our other game, with Benny and River, being a little different. I think you've done it really well, and I think that that's kind of a great way to play it. Of, you get a little side eye, you get a little short answers, maybe like, you got blue skin, or kind of thing, but like, you've peppered in, I said this in the other episode I was on, that like you've peppered in with like some tieflings own businesses and stuff like that. And Naxori's like, oh my goodness, tiefling, this is great. Like, nobody hates you. I've thought people hated me for so long. And it's nice. So it's like, you're still a strange creature. You're still maybe a little out of the ordinary, but nobody is, treating you poorly, and that's not part of the game. And that, I think that's really nice, and it's really great. So you don't forget that you're, maybe a little outside the box, but you're not mistreated for any reason.
The way that I deal with race as the DM is that it is more about your character than about any kind of sociological stuff. So tieflings can do stuff. They're looked at weird, but they're not going to be looked at weird by me. Water Genasi. Oh, that's interesting. But you're in Waterdeep, so it's not that weird.
Right. Yeah, it's not weird. So yeah, I like that you played it like it feels like a real world, which without the extreme racism that the real world unfortunately has. But it's a world that feels lived in, feels honest, and feels just kind of how people would react. There's people in these towns that you go to, they've never seen a water genasi or a tiefling or fire genasi or whatever it is, so they might look at you a little weird. but then they ask you for help and they still talk to you, and then you find, I love in our game they find common ground and have these like fun conversations, or they're asked a question, or like a little boy loves the tiefling that I played, like was so fascinated by her. Like you have these like really sweet, like genuine moments, and it ends up being this very beautiful thing.
And it's fun for me. And that's really what it's all about. And also, in case anyone out there watching is like, wow, this is a panel of 8 white people talking about race. We know that, and that's why we're talking about it. Thank you very much. Philip, you're up.
So Dylan had mentioned Full Metal Alchemist earlier. With TikTok, a lot of the time, because no one had ever, no one in this particular setting had seen a Warforged, in anyone's living memory, he passed it off a lot of the time as just being a big dude in armor.
That's a good way to do it.
Little disguised self, and away he went.
Mm-hmm.
Little disguised self goes a long way.
It really does.
At one point, he actually picked up a whole costume, so he looked like one of the giant like robot armor guys from Sucker Punch. Had like the big straw brim hat and everything.
That's fun. Next tip.
I mean, not necessarily as a player, but this is more like a question for you, Lincoln, about like DMing, especially with stuff that's like pre-written. Like, are you often finding yourself going through and sort of correcting some things? Like, because I'm kind of like prepping some things, and it's like, okay, well, there's a couple sessions ago, the party encounters a mind flayer, and it's written as like, he, and it's like, well, why? I mean, it's like, why is this space octopus person, why is it a him? Like, it's like there's a lot of stuff like that where it's just like, I don't want to do that. Like, why? That doesn't make sense. Like, it just, or even like the whole campaign that we're running, the pre-written thing is, it starts off with the party being kidnapped to be sold as slaves. And it's like, okay, I mean, it's a really interesting story, but then there's like lots of stuff that's kind of written in that it's kind of like, it's like, I don't want to do that, because it's like you're saying, Jess, like, I was like, there's like, we're trying to escape from some of those things, and it's like, you can either just be cruel for the sake of being cruel, or you can just kind of like, no, let's just tell a fun, whimsical story, and you don't have to be mean about it.
Yeah,
like
that is something that I have learned in my now 2.5+ years running consistent games, is that just change it. If you don't like it, just change it. That's the nice thing about being the DM, because we don't know, we didn't read the book, and I do a lot of interludes between our adventures, and I specifically will write female identifying characters or non-binary characters just for the sake of variety. And I change up the races because you could be in town and it's just a bunch of humans and elves and dwarves, and that's fucking boring. So instead, I like to pepper in these other characters to add some diversity. And I like to play female villains in things. I like to play little kids because it adds so much more to the story than if it's just, well, here's a bunch of adults talking about stuff. That's not as much fun. And I'm an actor and I want to do voices, and I'm not doing anything right now other than this. So if I can put on a stupid voice and be a lady at the same time, why not? And they're just going to laugh, and then we move on with the story.
I like my backgrounds to look like the cantina scene in Star Wars, with this sheer variety of people that you see in the background there. Everyone's got a story. Let's see what happens.
And if you want to hear that story, go over and talk to him. I haven't written anything, so it'll be improv. Let's go.
There was like some D&D blog that I was reading that pointed out that like it's kind of silly how like if you read, the lore, it kind of tries to make it seem like, most of the cities are mostly humans, and then there's kind of like, the races kind of have their own lands, and they kind of live, except for maybe halflings who are scattered out with everybody. But then like when you look at the way that it's actually played, it feels weird because like every D&D game has like this huge mishmash of different races. So it's kind of like everybody just kind of forgets about this idea that the races are all separate. And like it almost by default slides into that cantina mode where it's just like, oh yeah, like there's a dragonborn like shopkeeper haggling with a lizard man, like whatever, or half elemental like running a bakery together with an orc, like
Which makes total sense because the elemental is a fire elemental, and that's how they heat the kiln. Come on.
Right.
Yeah, it's just logical.
Yeah, Dylan.
Yeah, I love this. And I can feel you on making a cantina with interesting characters. I can confirm that when I put Brad and Chad, the Golfman twins, in a bar in D&D, no one wants to talk to them. They are the least interesting people in the bar.
We fucking did not.
We did not.
But in that same town, it was the very end as we were finishing up Lost Mines, the starter kit where Matt and Rachel's short-lived but first characters came from. We had a moment where we brought our freshly minted friend, the Bugbear, back to be the sheriff of our town, and it led to a really fantastic moment for all the people where they were able to rally behind this figure, even though it was originally outcast, to the point where one of the main villains in town was trying to throw a stink. We had a tiefling by this point. We had Rachel the tiefling. I mentioned short-lived, didn't even last through the whole Lost Mines of Phandelver. But through these interactions, Orson, who I played, is a cliche, big, dumb fighter who sees the good in everyone, and finally cracked and punched the lights out of a woman who kept talking bad to our tiefling, talking bad about our new Bugbear friend, to the point of, I think I said something as cliche as, turned around, she makes one more line, and he stops, says, "I wish you hadn't said that," turns around, punches her in the face, and leaves. And so that's the kind of thing that's the only moment of this racism that I can remember in any of the games we played. And it's sort of cracked the reality into that's how bad that idea is, that there's one person who's willing to be like that and they don't deserve to be here anymore. And that's sort of how we've played it since.
And that was kind of a beautiful moment in that, like, Naxori being new to the party was like, oh, someone is defending me, like these people are my friends, like, oh, okay, like, and that was, so it was worth it to have that moment, and then we just haven't really had it again, which is even more worth it. But like, it was, yeah, that moment ended up being great.
And I specifically put that in there because I wanted it to be a character defining moment for the party. How do you guys as a group react to this? This is somebody that you are close with now. You've brought them back so that you can make them sheriff of Phandalin for whatever fucking reason we decided to do that. And then when people are shitty, you guys stepped up, and I was like, that's what I want. That's what I want my players to be, good people. And you are good people, and that's why it hasn't really come into it much, because it's only when we need an antagonist, we need an obstacle for you guys to be like, no, we're better than this. We're better than you. Go fuck yourself. Matt, you had something you wanted to say.
A little bit in the other direction. We also have trouble with the gray area. When we were supposed to steal a shipment in the basement of a bar that had maybe been lifted, and we weren't sure. And we're like, maybe he really I don't know. We don't have the full story. You were like, oh, he's also sex trafficking. We were like, ooh, let's kill him.
Yeah, that was a last minute throw in there because you guys were being very noble, and I was like, no, just get it, just smash. He's sex trafficking.
You have to go fight him.
Yes. Yeah, sometimes you just got to make it obvious. I've learned, especially when you have a group of noble, good people. I actually had an issue in the group that Ted plays with where they didn't want to do any of the quests because they're like, well, we're not guns for hire. And I was like, okay, he poisoned a whole town's well. And they're like, okay. I'm like, God, geez, it's in the book, guys. I'm just trying to do the book for you.
Wait, someone's poisoned the water hole?
Yeah, I was just about to make the joke.
That is a fantastic place to wrap things up. Thank you, everybody. This has been so much fun. We'll go around the squares as we always do. If you have any plugs, this will be around Christmas. that this is coming out. So anything you got coming out around then, we'll go Jess around the square.
Well, you can't see me play Pyra, but you can see me play Tazu, the Blue Dragonborn Monk, on our D&D show, Fables of Refuge. And if this is coming out around Christmas, then maybe you can tune in to see our Christmas episode. Maybe an old friend, Santa, will show up.
Oh my God, Santa! I know him.
No, not Santa, Santa.
Oh,
Santa.
got it. Rachel, what's going on with you?
Oh, well, you can find me. I write short stories, have a blog on rachelriendeau.com, RIENDEAU. You can find me on Instagram at Le Petit Renard and Second Star Stories, where I write some flash fiction. I am also a new contributor to the blog Sartorial Geek. So it's sartorialgeek.com. You can see some of my stuff on there, most likely by the time this airs, because I haven't written, this was a yesterday announcement. And that is a blog for geek stuff run by a bunch of amazing geeky women. So you'll find a lot of fun fan things on there, geeky things from me.
And actually, Jess, we forgot to get your social media. So do those again.
On Twitter, I'm at Jess Next Door VO, and on Instagram, I am Jess Next Door, but there's no E in next because there's not enough characters.
Love it. Philip, what's new with you? What's going on around Christmas time?
Well, I'll hopefully be wrapping up a semester of grad school. So most of my social media side stuff has been pretty quiet, but you can find me on Twitter at FlipWriter. And I tweet about a lot of library related things in addition to D&D and general kind of nerdiness. So
His librarian tweets are actually very funny because guess what? Stupid people go to the library. Dylan, how about you? Socials if you want them. What you got going on around the Christmas time?
Oh man, Christmas time. Well, Merry Christmas, everyone. Congratulations on making it to the end of 2020, if we indeed made it and we can release this episode. Not much to say. You can mostly find me on the internet, streaming old reality TV, illegally streaming sports, and researching rules on D&D so I can sound smart in conversations like this.
Too smart. That's the problem. Dylan's gotten too good at D&D. Ted, plug us.
I still do not have a podcast. I'm working on that one. But you can find me at tedyoungmusic.com or on the Instagram at tedyoungmusic. And that's what I got for you. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Fred, what you got?
I pretty much just lurk on social media, so you're going to be really bored if you try to find me on there. But I have done some writing for a sketch group with some of my friends here in Chicago called Yum Yum Sketch. You can find that on Facebook. The Facebook group is Yum Yum Sketch, creatively enough. And I have a project in development, a podcast. Nothing is live yet, so this is like a watch this space kind of situation, but I guess get excited about it. It's going to be called tentatively The World Builders. And the idea is it's going to be like a bi-weekly show where we have guests on to sort of collaboratively construct like a whole fleshed out fantasy realm in which to like tell stories, basically like an open source fantasy world building podcast.
Love that.
That sounds awesome.
We're looking for guests too. So if anybody feels like coming on,
I volunteer as tribute.
Okay. Well, I'll get with you guys about that. But yeah, that's coming down the pipe.
And finally, Matthew Woods. Tell us all about your gorgeous art and where to find it.
I'm an artist and an illustrator. My website is matthewwoodsart.com. You can find me on Instagram and Instagram only at Hallow Woods, Hallow like Halloween and woods like the forest. I will not wish you a Merry Christmas, but I will tell you about this time of year. We're approaching 300 more days till Halloween.
Matt loves Halloween. I love Christmas. And then for 2 months out of the year, we fight. That's all. I'm Lincoln L. Hayes on all the socials, lincolnlhayes.com for all my stuff. By now, there's plenty of episodes up on the Session Zero D&D show Instagram, which is this show. And you can also find those videos on the YouTube if you're not an Instagrammer. Thank you, everybody. This has been so much fun. If it is Christmas, in fact, when this drops, Merry Christmas. If it's not, who gives a shit? Time doesn't matter. It's 2020. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful night. Go play some D&D.
Good Yule.
Bye.
Resume
Bye.
awkward wave.
Humbug.
Awkward wave. Wait, awkward wave. Hey, it's me again. Did that seem like fun? All that D&D talk? Well, I could teach you if you want. Just go to my website, lincolnlhayes.com/storytelling, and take a look. I can teach it a couple hours, run through the basics with you, do a small session, see what you think. I can run it for just you and a couple friends, you and your family, you and some coworkers. What do you got to lose? If you don't like it, it's one night of TV you don't watch. But if you do like it, you have a hobby you could play for the rest of your life. Sounds good to me. Head over to my website, lincolnlhayes.com/storytelling. Let's chat. And thanks for watching Session Zero. See you next week.